thought I was driving to my daughter's house to celebrate 5 years of her marriage with a quiet family dinner and maybe a bottle of good wine. I had packed an overnight bag, brought flowers from the garden, and told Robert to wear the blue shirt Lily always liked on him. I had no idea that by Sunday morning, my husband and I would be standing in their wine cellar with no way out, while Lily and her husband Daniel stood upstairs with a notary and a stack of forged transfer documents designed to take the farmhouse my mother had left me, not borrowing it, not asking for it, not raising the subject at dinner with soft voices and careful words, taking it, transferring it, making it theirs on paper while we were locked in the dark with a deadbolt between us and the rest of our lives, and my daughter, the girl I had nursed through chicken pox and heartbreak and every small catastrophe of a young life, the girl whose hair I had braided every single morning until she left for college, whose first broken heart had kept me awake until 4 a.m. while I held her on the kitchen floor, had designed the plan herself. That part, it turned out, was entirely hers. My name is Margaret. I am 63 years old, and until 18 months ago, I believed I was a genuinely lucky woman. Not wealthy, not remarkable. Lucky in the quiet, sturdy sense of the word. I had Robert, my husband of 38 years, a man who reached for my hand without thinking when we walked through airports or unfamiliar streets, who had never once made me feel like a burden when I was frightened. I had my daughter, Lily, who called every Sunday at noon without fail, who sent cards for no reason, who knew without asking which mug I preferred in the morning. And I had the Hargrove farmhouse on Clearwater Road, 40 acres of old oak and open field, and a wide white clapboard house with a wraparound porch and a kitchen full of afternoon light, which my mother had signed over to me alone 2 weeks before she died, in a quiet meeting at her lawyer's office, where she had held my hand across the table and said, "This is yours. Don't let anyone take it from you." I had not understood then that she was being specific. Robert and I had lived on Clearwater Road for 22 years. We had replanted the east garden 3 times before the hydrangeas finally stayed. First planted in spring, killed by frost, replanted, eaten by deer, replanted again until they bloomed big and extravagant and blue every June. A small stubbornness that had always made me proud. We had tiled the kitchen ourselves the summer Robert was between projects, long weekends of measuring and grouting and arguing cheerfully about spacing, the smell of tile adhesive and coffee mixing in that warm kitchen, the two of us on our knees on the subfloor like people building something that mattered, because we were. The porch had a loose board on the left side that Robert kept saying he'd fix, and never did. And I had stopped wanting him to fix it because the slight spring underfoot had become its own kind of welcome. There was a pencil line on the pantry door frame where I had marked Lily's height every birthday, from the time she was 2 until she turned 16, and made the last mark herself, deliberately, slightly crooked, a little too tall. There was a crack in the second stair that she had named the talking stair when she was 6 because it spoke when you stepped on it, and Robert had never repaired it because Lily said it made the house feel alive, and we had believed her and loved her for saying it. That house was not property to us. It was a record of everything we had built. Every season and argument and celebration and ordinary evening, all of it layered into the floors and walls the way rings accumulate inside a tree. And Lily knew that. Lily had grown up inside that record. She knew which floorboard by the window seat hummed in strong wind. She knew the smell the kitchen took on in October, dry and sweet and particular to that house alone. That belief, that the house was as sacred to her as to us, was the last illusion to fall, and when it fell the hardest. Lily had married Daniel 5 years ago in a vineyard ceremony upstate, a beautiful wedding with dancing under string lights, and Lily in a vintage cream dress she had altered herself, taking in the waist by hand the week before. I had stood at the edge of the dance floor with Robert's hand in mine, watching my daughter laugh at something her new husband had said, and felt the fullness that comes when someone you love is also doing well. It was one of the best evenings of my life. I did not know it was also the last evening in which I understood my daughter completely. Daniel was in real estate development, handsome in a way that seemed effortful, like a man rehearsing ease rather than feeling it. What he talked about best was property, values, trends, potential, opportunity. When real estate entered the conversation, he had a look in his eyes I can only describe as appetite. I had wanted to believe it was professional passion. I had been inclined to like Daniel because Lily loved him, and because love is not something you require proof for. In those first years of their marriage, we had monthly dinners, easy conversation, the comfortable predictability of family routine. It was pleasant, normal, the kind of normal you do not appreciate while you are inside it. The first question came at Christmas, 2 years into their marriage. Daniel had poured his second glass of wine and asked, in a tone designed to sound offhand, what Robert and I planned to do with all that land as we got older. Robert laughed and said we planned to stay on Clearwater Road until someone carried us out. Daniel smiled and said, Of course. He just meant logistically. Had we thought about estate planning? Trusts? He knew a very good attorney who specialized in elder law. Robert said we had our own attorney, thank you. I changed the subject. Later, in bed, I mentioned it to Robert, and he said Daniel was in real estate. It was simply how his mind worked. I agreed. I let the moment go. I should not have let it go. The questions continued the following year, patient rather than persistent. Each one spaced enough apart that you could almost believe there was no pattern. That spring, Daniel mentioned on the phone that his colleague had experience with rural properties and estate transfers, if we ever wanted a second opinion. I thanked him and said we were well covered. That summer, Lily came alone, and we sat on the porch with iced tea, and she brought up the house in a way that felt prepared. Too smooth for a spontaneous conversation. The upkeep must be exhausting, she said. All those acres. Had we thought about something smaller, closer to town? She said it with warmth in her voice, real-sounding warmth, and I was almost moved by it. But I noticed that when she spoke about the house, her eyes had something in them that didn't belong to my daughter's face. Something calculating, something I recognized with a cold flash of clarity as Daniel. I sat with that recognition and wrote it down. I had started keeping a small notebook, a spiral-bound pocket notepad I kept in my bag. I wrote dates and questions and small irregularities. A drawer in Robert's study left slightly open after a visit. Papers on his desk shifted. Lily asking in passing whether the farmhouse was still solely in my name, whether my mother's deed transfer had ever been legally contested. I wrote down the Sunday in January when Daniel called Robert directly to propose a family investment opportunity. A developer interested in a long-term lease of the Clearwater Road property. Very favorable terms. Revenue generating. We could stay in the house, of course. Robert told him they weren't interested and ended the call. That night, I watched Robert's face and saw the look I had learned to read in 38 years of marriage. The look of a man unsettled, more than he is willing to say. I took his hand. He held it briefly and let go. We ate our dinner, and neither of us said the thing we were both beginning to think. The anniversary invitation arrived at the end of March, handwritten on heavy cream cardstock in Lily's looping cursive. A small dinner to celebrate 5 years, overnight in the guest room. Come Friday, stay through Sunday. Part of me needed to be wrong. The part of me that had braided her hair and held her on the kitchen floor needed very badly to drive to that house and discover that I had manufactured a conspiracy from ordinary family friction, and feel the embarrassment of a woman who reads too much into things. So we packed our bags, and I brought flowers from the garden and told Robert to wear the blue shirt. We arrived Friday afternoon. Their house was a renovated Victorian near the center of town. Daniel's aesthetic, everything spare and precise, smelling of cedar diffusers and furniture polish. Lily met us at the door in a yellow dress and held on when she hugged me, a moment longer than usual, her chin on my shoulder. I told myself that was love. The kitchen smelled of roasting garlic and fresh herbs. Daniel was opening a bottle of Burgundy at the counter and smiled when he saw me, a wide and genuine-looking smile. Dinner was salmon and good risotto, and conversation moved easily all evening. And Lily laughed in the way she used to laugh when she was young, head back, unguarded, her whole face in it. By 10 o'clock, I was in the guest room telling myself I had been a fool. I brushed my teeth and got into bed and fell asleep more peacefully than I had in months. I woke at 3 a.m. to voices through the wall. The guest room shared a wall with Daniel's home office. The voices were low and urgent, the specific urgency of people who believe they are speaking quietly enough, but are not. I lay still in the dark, telling myself it was a late phone call, a business matter, anything that would let me close my eyes again. Then I heard Lily say my name. Not Mom, Margaret. The flatness of it, the way she said it like a variable in an equation, a problem to be managed rather than a person she loved, brought me out of bed before I was fully aware of deciding to move. I crossed the room in bare feet on the cold hardwood and pressed my ear against the plaster of the wall. I could not hear everything. Their voices were too controlled for that. But I caught enough. I heard, before she figures it out. I heard, the notary confirmed Friday. I heard Lily say something about 3 hours, maybe 4. That should be sufficient. And then Daniel's voice, quiet, precise, measured as a dimension on a blueprint. Sunday morning, both of them downstairs. That's more than enough time. I stood at that wall for a long time after the voices went quiet. Then I walked back to the bed and sat down on the edge of it, in the dark. Robert was asleep beside me, breathing steadily, entirely unaware. The room was perfectly still. I could feel my pulse in my jaw, in my wrists, in the hollow of my throat. I sat with the words I had just heard and turned them over in my mind, looking for an innocent arrangement of them, the way you search a wreckage for something whole. There was none. Notary and Sunday morning, and both of them downstairs, and that's more than enough time, do not assemble into anything that is not what they are. I did not wake Robert. I lay back down and watched the pale gray light begin at the edges of the curtain, and something inside me went very, very quiet. Not the quiet of fear, but the quiet of a woman who has finished being surprised and is beginning to think. They had a plan for Sunday morning. They needed us downstairs. They had a notary, a timeline, documents I had not yet seen. They had been building this for months, perhaps longer, perhaps since that first careful question at Christmas 2 years ago, perhaps even before that. What they did not have was the knowledge that I had been listening. I spent the remaining hours of that night building a plan of my own, quietly, methodically, in the dark of my daughter's guest room, with my mother's voice in my memory like a compass. Don't let anyone take it from you. I moved before the house was fully awake. At 6 a.m, when the light through the curtains was still thin and gray and Robert's breathing hadn't changed, I got up, dressed in silence, and slipped into the hallway. The house was quiet in that particular way old houses are before the people inside them stir. A watchful, held-breath stillness. The cedar diffusers on the hall table were faintly sweet. The floors were cold under my socks. I stood outside Daniel's office door for a moment, my heart beating in a way I refused to call fear, and then I tried the handle. It was unlocked. Later, I would think that this was their first mistake. The assumption that a 63-year-old woman with flowers from her garden and a blue-shirted husband would not under any circumstances go looking. I stepped inside and closed the door softly behind me. The room smelled of printer ink and something faintly chemical, the smell of paperwork. The desk held a manila folder that had not been pushed to the edge with the others. It sat slightly forward, slightly separated, the way something sits when it has been consulted recently and recently returned. I pulled it toward me and opened it. There were 6 pages. The first was a property transfer agreement for the Hargrove farmhouse on Clearwater Road, naming Daniel and Lily as the receiving parties, effective upon notarization. The second was what appeared to be my signature on a line I had never stood in front of, authorizing the transfer in full. The third was a letter, purportedly from me, stating that I wished to gift the property to my daughter and son-in-law in recognition of their care for me, and that I did so of my own free will, without coercion or undue influence. The fourth page was a notarial acknowledgment, dated with tomorrow's date, Sunday, and signed by a notary whose name I did not recognize. Pages 5 and 6 were titled transfer forms, the kind that, once filed with the county recorder's office, move property from one name to another with the permanent clean efficiency of a door being locked. I read all 6 pages twice, slowly. My hands were steady. I had expected them not to be, but the cold, quiet thing that had settled into me at 3 a.m. was still holding. Because what I felt looking at a forged version of my own signature was not panic. It was certainty, and certainty is useful. Panic is not. I took photographs of every page with my phone, front and back, checking that each image was clear. Then I put the folder back exactly as I had found it, slightly forward, slightly separated, and left the office and closed the door and went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Because what you do after you find the evidence is you make tea, and you think, and you do not let your hands shake. Not yet, not here, not in their kitchen where they might come downstairs and see it. I called my attorney, Carol Marsh, at 7:15. Carol had handled my mother's estate and knew the Hargrove deed the way she knew her own address. I spoke quietly, standing at the kitchen window with the early garden visible outside, the hydrangeas just beginning to show green against last winter's brown, patient and stubborn, and coming back for the 4th time. I told Carol what I had heard through the wall the night before. I told her about the folder, the 6 pages, the forged signature, the notary's name I had memorized. She said 3 words before anything else. Do not sign. I told her I had no intention of signing anything. She said she would handle the rest. A fraud alert on the property filed the moment the county recorder's office opened. A colleague standing by to flag any attempted transfer. What I need you to do, she said, is stay calm and give them absolutely nothing to be suspicious of between now and when that notary arrives. Can you do that? I said yes. She said, good, and Margaret, your mother would be proud of you. That was the only moment standing at that window with the hydrangeas outside and the kettle beginning to whistle, that my throat tightened. I swallowed it and thanked her and ended the call and made my tea. Robert came downstairs at 7:45 and kissed me on the top of the head and said the mattress was too soft and his back was protesting. I poured his coffee and said I'd slept poorly too. I would tell him everything, but not here, not in their kitchen, not where voices carried through walls. The morning passed in a way that was, on its surface, entirely ordinary. Eggs and toast. Daniel talked about a renovation project he was consulting on upstate. Lily asked about the hydrangeas with such natural warmth, such precise daughterly interest, that for one disorienting moment I looked at her across the table and almost believed her. Then I thought of Margaret, flat and cold through the plaster, and the warmth folded back into what it was, a performance, a very polished one, built from years of practice, but a performance. At noon, Daniel suggested we go down to the wine cellar to choose something special for a celebration toast at dinner. He said it with complete, easy confidence, the confidence of a man whose plan has not yet encountered the word no. Lily smiled and said what a wonderful idea, and she looked at me when she said it, and her smile was the sharpest thing in that room. We followed them through the laundry room and down narrow stone stairs into a cool, mineral-smelling space. Proper shelving, temperature-controlled, Daniel's precision applied underground. I heard the door at the top of the stairs close behind us. I heard the deadbolt slide. Robert turned immediately. Daniel. Silence from above, complete and deliberate. He took the stairs 2 at a time and put his shoulder to the door, which did not move. He turned and looked at me, and his face held the expression of a man whose understanding of the world is being rearranged at speed. I know, I said quietly. I know exactly what's happening, and it's handled. He stared at me. Margaret. I found documents in his office this morning, forged transfer documents for the farmhouse. My forged signature, a notary, a full filing package. I called Carol Marsh at 7, and she's already placed a fraud alert on the property at the county recorder's office. Whatever Daniel carries upstairs to that notary cannot be filed. It will trigger an investigation instead. I watched his face move through disbelief and into something that looked terribly like grief. I'm sorry, I said. I should have woken you last night when I heard them. I didn't want to tell you here, but I can't let you stand in front of Lily without knowing. Robert sat down on the bottom step. The silence of that cellar was the loudest thing I had ever stood inside, heavier than anger, heavier than the sound of a deadbolt sliding. Then he said, Lily? Just the name. Just that one word with 30 years of fatherhood sitting in it like a stone. Yes, I said. He put his face in his hands. I sat beside him on the step and put my arm around him, and we stayed there, the two of us, in the cool mineral dark, while our daughter stood somewhere above us, completing the plan she had built across months of careful questions and patient waiting. After a while, Robert lifted his head. His eyes were red. His jaw was set. He said, What do we do? We wait, I said. And then we walk out of here and say everything that needs to be said. 20 minutes. I counted them on my watch. Then the deadbolt slid back and the door opened and Lily stood at the top of the stairs in the blouse she had changed into, her expression one of practiced, sorrowful regret, the expression of a woman who has come to find her parents after an unfortunate accident. Behind her was Daniel, and beside him a man in a jacket and tie with a briefcase, the notary. Mom, Lily said, I'm so sorry. That latch is terrible. It must have caught—" "Stop," I said. I said it once, quietly. She had expected something broken. Tears, a shaking voice, the sound of a woman undone by her child. Instead, I walked up the stairs and stepped into the laundry room and looked at my daughter at a distance of 4 feet, and I spoke the way you speak when every word is a decision. The county recorder's office has had a fraud alert on the Hargrove farmhouse since 8 o'clock this morning. The transfer you have prepared cannot be filed. Carol Marsh is in contact with the county sheriff's office because what is in that briefcase is a forged document bearing my forged signature, which is a felony in this state. I have clear photographs of every page of the transfer package from Daniel's office. I looked at the man with the briefcase. I'd like to know what you were told about the circumstances of this signing. The notary went still in a way that said everything. Daniel's face lost its shape. The polished, easy man expression fell away, and what was underneath it was smaller and younger and frightened. Lily said, "You've been under so much stress, you're not seeing this clearly." And Robert said, from behind me in a voice I had never heard from him in 38 years of marriage, Don't you say that to your mother." Lily looked at her father. She could not hold the look. The notary excused himself to make a phone call and left with his briefcase and did not come back. The aftermath unfolded over months, not hours. Carol told me that week that Daniel had attempted a near-identical scheme 3 years earlier with his elderly aunt. A forged deed transfer in a different county. The same method, a similar notary. The aunt had not had a notebook or a Carol Marsh. She'd lost a vacation property and spent a year in a legal process that came to nothing. Daniel had emerged without charge and, it appeared, more confident than before. Lily had known about the aunt. That was the detail that made the floor uncertain beneath me. Not just that she had helped design this plan, but that she had watched Daniel do it to someone else and then brought him home to meet her parents. The legal proceedings were thorough. The notary cooperated fully and confirmed Daniel had presented the documents as legitimate, claiming they were pre-signed with my consent. Daniel entered a guilty plea on 2 counts of attempted deed fraud and 1 count of forgery, receiving a suspended sentence and 3 years of supervised probation. The notary lost his commission. Lily was not charged, a distinction I understand legally and cannot fully reconcile personally in the quiet of the kitchen at night when the house is settled and I am left alone with the shape of what happened. She called in February, 4 months after the guilty plea. We spoke for 11 minutes. She said she was sorry. The word itself, not "I regret the impact," not a circumlocution designed to acknowledge without admitting. Sorry. I told her I heard her. I told her that if she wanted a relationship with us, it would have to be built on honesty and that I wasn't going to rush it. She said she understood. I believe that she did, and I held the question of whether it was enough quietly and privately, because it is a question that takes time to answer, and time is something I have learned not to waste on things that don't deserve it. I am sitting on the porch of the Hargrove farmhouse on a Tuesday morning in late March. The coffee in my mug has gone cold because I keep forgetting to drink it. The hydrangeas along the east garden fence are opening in their 4th comeback, blue and extravagant, unbothered by everything that has happened inside the walls behind them. The talking stair still talks. The loose board still springs underfoot like a small hello. Robert is inside on the phone with our contractor about the east fence. Ordinary things. The good ordinariness of a life that remains yours. My mother held my hand across a lawyer's table and told me not to let anyone take this from me. I thought she meant the house. She did, of course. She was a practical woman, and she meant the house. But she also meant, I think, the life inside it. The pencil line on the pantry door frame, the hydrangeas that came back a fourth time, the man who reaches for your hand without thinking in airports. They came for all of it. They didn't get any of it.